knowledge that was talking about. And also, we also said that opening up border cities started from 1992. But the policy is faithfully following Deng Xiaoping. Of course, it's a break in 1989, right? But starting from just the end of the Cultural Revolution and starting from 1982, I think, there's a very well-planned project, five-year project, one after the other. So I was thinking it's amazing. It's really leading up to contemporary situation. So in terms of time, it doesn't only start from 2013. So that was that propensity. All these tendencies building up and preparation discursively, internally, and also IR theories, and implementation of all local institutions and government and everything. So you mentioned there's a real road or railway, those infrastructure leading to where transportation of steel or transportation of resources and so on. So it, of course, there's a self-serving purpose.
Do you want to respond to this first, or do you want to collect questions first? Questions. Okay. Start.
Yeah. Again, it's a very good, so I fully agree with you, so we are very similar. But in terms of spatial fix, then I'm asking you two questions. One is that when EU or US are very suspicious of Belt and Road, does that mean that they feel that China's expansion of spatial fix is simultaneously reduce their spatial fix? Okay. This is one. Another question is that when China opened the door, China was spatial fix for West. Yes. So why China said, is that because that actually during many decades of dealing with global system actually was an advantage to China when China started with a clean ground. So that's a question. Then to Professor Zhu, maybe I need some pedagogical guides from you, because you mentioned you cover a lot of things. But I feel that perhaps the yes comment is much more helpful. Is that I feel that you folks, you have certain political values in terms of looking at China as an actor in this party state. A lot of internal contradictions. You mentioned China, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan. You mentioned a lot of phenomena. You also mentioned corruption. You also mentioned unfinished construction. So I'm a little bit confused. What are the message? Is that you mean that China as this type of communist party state will naturally lead towards that direction? But my point of view is if we take this global structure, whether China is communist state or not state, that Belt and Road will be a natural tendency to, even China is not communist party state, they will do the spatial fix anyway. They will be different, but then you have to, then it's the calculation. I said, then you have to have a lot of analysis rather than a lot of statements, because there are too many statements.
And just before we allow response, Richard, do you think your question is in line with that? Do you want to wait for the next round?
My question is also about spatial fix. Okay. If you want, I can write now.
Yeah, let's put it all together.
Cool. It's not a criticism of what you are saying. I think my question will go beyond your presentation. At the end, you showed the quote that any spatial fix is only temporary. My question really is whether Belt and Road could be even temporarily fixed. And I will just mention a few evidence which, in my opinion, show that even temporarily Belt and Road doesn't have quite potential to be a spatial fix for such huge, economy as China. So, for instance, in 10 years, China constructed 30,000 kilometers of high-speed railway. That is 3,000 kilometers per year. How many kilometers of high-speed railway China produced all over the world? I'm not sure, but not more than 1,000 probably. Right? That means it's about 3% of what it produced at home. I don't think that situation would be different with highways, right? We hear a lot about, for instance, Highway Montenegro, right? Do you guys know how many kilometers it's in Montenegro? 41. Okay, I don't think this is right. Maybe there is a few bits here and there, but okay. I don't think the Belt and Road would now enter another phase, which would be even bigger, because already now we are observing backlash. So other countries might be less willing into entering these kind of deals. Actually, from China itself, we hear that Chinese government doesn't want their companies to lend so much as they did before. We should take into account the huge debt of China, 40 trillion, right? So China has $4 trillion, but it has 40 trillion debt. Now renminbi is getting weaker. It means its debt denominated in American dollars is actually increasing. Also, you showed the data about foreign FDI is decreasing. So I mean, my question is whether the spatial fix was ever a possibility, or whether now it finally seems that it's just not possible.
Space. I kid you not, I was at a conference a month ago, and someone was giving a talk, and they mentioned how space is now part of it. It's being spoken as part of the Belt and Road.
Okay.
Some articles. So Mars. A lot of space for countries.
Welcome to the red planet.
I think that's a very good question. I think it's obviously it was an aspiration to try to resolve the contradictions, but the realities on the ground, both within China and also externally, show that there's profound limits to this. So yeah, and already questions are being asked around. And well, you see in Africa where you see the Bagamoyo ports being suspended, right? Because you have African agents on one side, the Tanzanians are saying this is going to be too expensive for us. But also the Chinese side, you have companies now saying, well, the returns on the investment might not be so good. And I think what happened was, which is what happened in China in the post-2008 period, during the what do you call it, the stimulus package. You have this kind of enthusiasm or over-exuberance for people to get involved in these projects. And then after a few years, they realize, actually, we're not going to get our money back, we made a mistake, and stuff. And I think we'll probably see that to a degree in the Belt and Road. So yeah, I think that's a very good point. Would it ever really be a comprehensive?
I mean, theoretically, it makes very good sense.
Yeah.
Right? It's just that practically, maybe
Practically speaking, yes. I think with the EU-USA spatial, yes, it's the BRI constraining. Yeah, I agree. That's actually a good way to think about it. I think there you have a mixture of fears over that their space is going to be constrained by the Chinese, and also then of course you throw in the geopolitics and fear of influence. I think that's a very good way of looking at it, and I think that accounts for the hostility towards the BRI, which we see in media reports in the West. And certainly China, yes, China was for a period of time a spatial fix for Western capitalism. I mean, capitalism itself is boundless accumulation, right? That's the logic behind it. And it's always looking for new outlets, and China was for a good number of years, definitely useful in that respect. I think with the BRI, Joyce's question, the BRI reaching out beyond its original remit, original plan, I see the BRI in some respects as kind of Frankenstein's monster. It was created and now has a life of its own. So, because when you look at the logic, when you look at the original logic of the BRI, and then you say, oh, now Uruguay is included, or New Zealand is included, it's completely ridiculous, right? So I think it's one of these things where, again, over-enthusiasm, anyone trying to get involved in it, they're welcomed, because China doesn't want to be one of these countries that, no, you can't be in it, so of course you can be in it, everyone's welcome. But then of course that dilutes the whole project, the viability and the reality of the project. So yes, I think it's got a life of its own in many respects now, and it's kind of.
But you presented China as in a very passive position. I think it's very aggressive.
Yeah.
It seeks out Panama,
Yeah, it does seek out Panama for sure,
Yeah.
strategic. But why would it seek out New Zealand or Uruguay? Why would it seek out New Zealand or Uruguay?
I don't know. Why does it seek Europe 16+1?
Because they see that as the entry point into the
Yeah,
EU.
sure.
But I guess it's about numbers. It's not like about New Zealand itself, but it's like we can say that over 130 countries are part of our initiative, right?
Which shows it's a global project, which shows China's global reach.
But also there's a Pacific Island, the third island chain.
Yeah,
right?
there is that as well.
Yeah.
Which relates to maritime.
So it's not just spatial fix. I think the whole project is not. It's a security plan,
A lot.
strategy,
Yeah, a lot of that.
in a global way.
Yeah, first, actually, I always want to ask you one question. Do you think BRI is a vanity project or not?
Vanity.
Vanity project. Vanity.
就是虚荣的细化。
Okay.
虚荣的地方。
对对。
Okay.
虚荣的那个地方。你待会可以待会回答。Actually, I'm not asserting my judgment that the BRI will undergo retreating and probably abrupt end within quarter century. That's the thesis I gave in the March onwards conference. Yeah. And in that paper, I have analysis of this. Why is this so? Today, I only mentioned one. For example, there is no broad-based participation by Chinese private firm or middle class or something. No, 47, 48 or state-owned, construction business, and so actually the beneficiaries are really small circles. And then come to the questions. I think why I think that the spatial temporal fix. I'll totally agree with Ian Taylor and David Harvey, but I have my description of that. At first in 2008. China at the same time embarked on construction of 4 east-west, 4 south, that kind of construction, and then actually it contributed to support the 2008 the world economy crash. But we are so wondered because then we think, Taiwan, Taiwan and Japan, one superhighway will be saturated, right? And China just beginning, and then begins also a very fast financing or debt accumulation since 2008. So at that kind of capacity build up, then that becomes, and then you at first you still by aid high-speed rail, you still are quite have a profit rates or in need, but gradually you also, even China today, I think is already saturated. With the saturated, but with that build-up capacity of construction, where to go? I would say that part is what George Bataille said, curse the ship. So we have to find an outlet for that, or just like after a big war, you have to disarm the army. The same problem. So now they use BRI to expand that. But imagine then if the problem are not solved, disarmed or that kind of overcapacity that occurs this year are not solved, imagine, they are really good at infrastructure construction. They are so efficient. But then, for that capacity to survive, you will imagine maybe everybody say that the United States have everything decaying, or they need overhaul of the infrastructure. Let them do business. Let those efficient Chinese capacity to rebuild the United States, to rebuild Europe. Imagine that can be something that extend the life of that over capacity. But you can say that it's quite negative, right?
Yeah.
So it will exhaust itself. So that's my.
But my comment is that I don't know whether you agree with me that spatial fix too much, cover too much economic. So what he mentioned is only economic. But I think that
political dimension.
Yes, there are security political dimensions as well. So if you think that narrow, then I agree with you. But if you extend to security and also the competition with the United States, a global planning, then it's more than that. Even I sacrifice $billions, if I didn't get anything profit, my positioning as this is a friendship war of position is very important. When I'm in a position of making rules, I need to make the rules. That's enough. AIB, it's typically the China. What's the China game? They want to make rules. That's a position. So that's why I'm saying that that if you go beyond that, then you will not say that's very strange that 10 years of this.
Yeah. Maybe we can now open up to.
Yes.
But I just want to flag the one question, which is the nature of strategy and sort of political interest. And sort of going back to this morning, sort of does spatial fix align with where we imagine geopolitics in the way that, say, Lenin imagined each state's monopoly capital? There's no difference between the state and the capital and the interest, or is there? Do they misalign? So let's just shelve that for a moment, but also want to open up to.
No, I'm just wanted to add a word for this sustainability of these high-speed railways projects. I guess it's never sustainable economically. It's not about bringing benefits per se. I mean, these high-speed railways, because even in China, with the saturation of the people's constantly on the move, the high-speed railways are not economically sustainable. There was a Caixin investigation, I think it was published in March or February this year.
Some routes.
Yeah, and it was explicitly said that Chinese railways are bringing large amounts of debts towards the local government, because no matter how many people is traveling, are using these railways, it will never be sustainable. So I think it creates more benefits and disadvantages, of course, but it's not more. Solely about economic gains from the.
But then the party state will make it sustainable. That's the authoritarian state. They will make policies like from now on, all officials on business trip, no one is allowed to take a plane. Everybody was. No, I'm just joking. But I'm saying the party state they have don't underestimate them.
Or you can put cargo on
whatever.
Whatever. So we have a question.
I just want to go back to the dependency problem. I agree with what Professor Taylor was saying now, that somehow there be some more, we have a kind of a critic about Earth. For you, with your experience and the understanding of the problem, that is true. But the big majority of the people in Africa, so far they don't understand this problem as deep as understand. For them, they believe that we have what the Chinese want, and then they have, we can notice the exchange. That means they need our minerals, they need our coltans, we need the money. And then our choice of China sometimes because of our facilities. Let us say, you can see those people coming from Africa with a lot of money. traveling with money to China to buy goods. This will not sit in Taiwan or in Europe. The cash will end to China. When you board the airplane, they say we will not have more than 10,000 US dollars. But going to China, from Africa, China don't have this problem. You can take as much cash as you want. So in this way, we have what the Chinese need. So who depends on in terms of dependency? And then my question is, the Chinese, they always say they don't know a lot about Africa. Underline African people. So this connection, the Belt of World, the connectivity among peoples will open up this relationship between the Chinese and the Africans. But I don't understand why the Chinese are using what Europe says about Africa to go in relation to Africa, and then they want to cut Europe and say, don't go with Europe, go with us. But actually they are using the model, the image, the theories done by Europeans on Africa. So with this way of doing this, is it a way to build a very strong and lasting relationship?
We can.
I have one question for Professor Ian. It's like the AIIB seems like it wants to challenge the formal transnational organization like IMF or World Bank. But in your expectation, what do you think the result of the competition between the AIIB and IMF?
Well, the competition between the AIIB and the traditional multilateral lending agencies has the potential to give a degree of agency and space for African governments, who can then kind of play off and get a better deal. So actually, I think that's a positive for African governments. It's a potentially positive thing that they can get better loans, better concessions. So I don't have a problem with that. I think, however, you then come back to the question of what are the loans going to be used for? Are they going to be are they going to be used for the type of development, the developmental agenda which we all know is needed, or is it going to be a reproduction of the kind of tendencies we've seen with the World Bank and the IMF? But certainly it's a positive thing. Any diversification which allows countries in Africa to have a choice is a positive thing, right? But then the question comes, how do they use that choice? But yeah, yes, definitely. On who depends on who, that's a very good question. So if you go to Yiwu is totally dependent on Africa and the Middle East, right? If Africa and the Middle East stopped buying things from Yiwu, it's a game over, really, isn't it, for that town? So I think also with the role of, the role you mentioned of African traders going to China is something. You mentioned this as well. It's something which is very often overlooked when we talk about Sino-African relationships. It seems that very often we're looking at sort of China as the actor in Africa, whereas it's actually a two-way process. And the studies of what Africans are doing in China is much less developed than the study of what Chinese are doing in Africa. But I think it's just as important in many respects, because you have a large community of Africans, particularly in Guangdong, but also Yiwu and other areas, who are really the engine behind a lot of this trade. And of course that then raises interesting questions, because on the one hand, African consumers can be quite positive towards Chinese products, but then every now and then there's a backlash or hostility to the idea that Chinese products are displacing African products, African industry. But when you look at who's bringing these products into the African market, yes, the products themselves are Chinese, but the people who are bringing the products into Zambia are actually Zambians. People bringing this stuff into Congo are actually Congolese. So it raises interesting questions as to responsibility and the type of dynamic, the complicated dynamics of the relationship.
And on the same line, like with the, now for the Congolese, they know that without our cobalt, China will not make electric battery, show iPhone. So for us, we are sure that when someone is saying that China is built in the world or stadium, we think that he's joking. Because we are inviting them, they build for us, we pay for it. So nobody is thinking that China is built in. We give them money, they build, and then it's poorly built. That's why the backlash is very strong.
Yes.
But this is also another problem about who depends on whom.
Yes. Do you want to come to the last set of questions, or should we go another round?
Miss questions?
I don't think it was a direct question, but
Just another one.
maybe we can. Yes, of course.
我先用中文问，然后再用英文问。我中文的那个部分，因为这样我可能想的比较清楚，有点累。就是其实我是要就是追问 Taylor 刚才的那个问题，就是刚才这位就问他说，其实那个 investment 到了那里以后，如果是基建的话，会不会对那个非洲的那个 economic structure 带来一个根本性的改变？然后他觉得那个只是一个 infrastructure 加一个已经既有的一个 capitalist 的一个 model 而已。但是我觉得可能有一个地方是基建有什么东西，它的特殊性是在哪里呢？它是降低了某一种组织成本。就是说，当你去做一个生意的时候，你不只是说哦，我这里有个产业，然后你来买我的东西。譬如它需要一个买卖的空间，我怎么样去运输那个东西？我有没有个市集去让那个市集出现，然后那个东西可以被买卖？这个就是组织成本。这个组织成本就是要透过基建来做。那所以这个会不会可以让它有个 condition 去让它以后有某一些转型啊也好，或者是 structural 的这个 economic change 也好，但组织成本用的是什么？所以呢，这个要想一想怎么问。OK， 有没有人可以帮我翻译 ？OK， 没有，我自己来翻译。OK， this is a question for Professor Taylor. So I'm trying to expand his question to you because he actually asked you how if that kind of loan or money that goes into Africa is invested on infrastructure, will that be some kind of difference? And you said no, it may not be that kind of different because infrastructure is like a 2.0 version of the old model, and it's plus infrastructure, so there's not much change. But I'm thinking that infrastructure carries some kind of specificity. For example, if you want to make a trade deal between like two places, it's not only like I manufacture something and you receive something. There has to be a space or have to be some condition for example, a market to come up. That is what I think. What I can believe in Chinese that we call it 组织成本, meaning to lower down the cost of transaction. Transaction cost. So this kind of infrastructure may be kind of a precondition to lower down this kind of transaction cost. It may pave the way for some kind of structural economic change in Africa. But how will this happen? This may not be like the sole responsibility for Chinese government to think about. It may be like the agency of they have to look into the agency of the government there, how they can make use of this opportunity to change their economic structure. And so there are like 2 points. The first point is, do you think this is like some kind of, it may not directly lead to some kind of economic structural change in Africa, but it is beneficial for that to happen? And the second point is, if that is going to happen, and China may not be the one who can responsible for that. So how do you think how would it happen, or how should China do to make that happen, to make the government in Africa to think about that? Because I do think there is some kind of danger in mobile initiatives. Is that we talk so much about